but we're going to talk about how the smartest fundraisers are preparing for 2026 success. So it might feel too early, but 2026 is now 22 days away, 22 and a half. So get ready. 2026 is going to be a big year. We say that every year, but in general, there's a whole bunch of tax changes coming, which will make this particularly interesting and particularly challenging in some ways. So we'll dive in on that. A couple of quick notes. For many of you, this is our CFRE approved. Well, it's approved for everybody, but for some of you, this matters. 1.0 credits. We get a lot of thank you notes from folks who finally got their CFRE coming, thanks to coming to these webinars, which is just awesome. We're so excited to be supporting your career. Again, here's the quick session intros. We'll do the expert panel discussion. We'll do a little Q&A. We'll talk about some resources and next steps. As a minor note, you might have guessed, but we will send the slides and the recording around later today. Someone will still ask mid-session, so please, if you don't mind, just remind them. All right, so let's do some quick intros. This is just an intro of me. We'll get to intros of our panelists in a second. My name is Patrick. I'm lucky to be the co-founder and co-CEO of FreeWill alongside my wonderful, brilliant co-founder, Jenny. I'm in Brooklyn, New York. Jenny's in the great city of Seattle, Washington. FreeWill on a whole is the #1 estate planning and planned giving solution in the United States, trusted by more than 2,300 leading nonprofits, including folks like the American Diabetes Association, the Red Cross, etc. We have been featured in lots of lovely newspapers and magazines like AARP, the Wall Street Journal, and the New York Times. The team is about 230 folks right now, which is still a little nuts when I think about it. Has raised more than $13 billion to date, over 6 centuries of combined fundraising experience. And before we get started, I was thinking about what to give away. This is the second to last or penultimate webinar of the year, and I wanted to give away a very different book than what we've been given, but it is Breakneck, which I just finished reading, China's Quest to Engineer the Future. A friend of mine recommended this. I read it. We will drop a survey at the end of the session, and that'll be your chance to win it. It is actually by far the best nonfiction book I've read this year. It is totally fascinating about the rise of the US, the rise of China, how the two societies are similar, how they're different, how the governments think about advancing their populations versus not. It is, I don't know if anyone else has read it, it is an incredible book. And so I was not expecting to be giving it away. And I finished reading it 2 weeks ago, and I thought we have to put this on the list. It is such an interesting book. And so hopefully we will send that to some of you. We've asked how your week is going. Overall, people are feeling good. A lot of holiday spirits. The chill is in the air. Family, friends coming up, etc. Overall, people are feeling great. Also, good news, people are pretty confident about hitting their goals this year. So a lot of bump up here. And part of that is that we just had a pretty good Giving Tuesday. So I think this is the first Giving Tuesday results from published anywhere. And so it's all self-reported. But just to give you a sense of where we were compared to last year, let's go back to that. Half of you said Giving Tuesday was about the same. 21% said much better. 20% roughly said somewhat better, and then very few said worse. So we had a very strong Giving Tuesday across the board. Great to see it. Rich says Giving Tuesday was great this year. If anyone else has particular anecdotes about their Giving Tuesday, let us know. So dive in there. And thank you. Thanks to those who continue to drop marriage advice in the chat as well. All right. We have an incredible panel today, so I'm going to introduce them one by one, and then we're going to just dive right into it because there's a lot of really important things to talk about. First, Erin Chrest, Senior Managing Director of Major and Planned Giving at Maryland Public Television. Kalisha Colbert, also at MPT, a Planned Giving Manager there. Emily Ballard, Fund Development Director at Single Mom, which is a fascinating organization. We'll hear more about that in a moment. And Cheyenne Wolf, who's the Development Coordinator at the Dravet Syndrome Foundation. So just a little bit more on each of them one at a time. Erin is the Senior Managing Director of Major and Planned Giving at MPT. She oversees major planned and leadership giving initiatives at, you might have guessed, Maryland Public Television, formerly advanced philanthropic initiatives and scholarship and planned giving at the Maryland Institute College of Art, or MICA. It holds a BA from Wheeling Jesuit University, fellow Jesuit college graduate, and an MA from Appalachian State University. Erin, thank you so much for joining us. We also have Kalisha from MPT. She's the Plan Giving Manager, and she brings 15 years of nonprofit experience, including roles at the Salvation Army, the United Way, and the YMCA. So she has seen almost everything, leads donor engagement to inspire meaningful gifts for public media. I should uh, make as a side note here that Maryland Public Television is particularly good at plan giving and just hasn't. So we are especially excited to have these experts here. Has a BS in sociology from Millersville. So welcome, Kalisha. So glad to have you here as well. Emily is the fund development director at Single Mom. She oversees a $2 million in annual fundraising to empower single moms and their families. More than a decade serving as faith-based and secular nonprofits in roles spanning donor engagement, data management, strategic development. Previous roles with the University of Alaska and Crew, so a whole range of experience. Emily, we're so glad to have you here as well. And she's a graduate of Taylor University. And lastly, Cheyenne, development coordinator at DSF, supports DSF's mission to fund research and resources for families affected by Dravet syndrome. Nearly a decade with People and Stories and Gente en Cuentos, including several years as executive director of that organization, currently pursuing her CFRE. So hopefully, I think you get credit, even if you're a panelist for this one, and graduated cum laude from William Patterson University in my old backyard of northern New Jersey. So, so glad to have Cheyenne here. I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a moment so we can just get straight into questions. But welcome, everybody. Hope you're having a great December. Um, Cheyenne, let's start with you. We're just gonna, the big question, what was the biggest fundraising lesson you learned in 2025, and how is it shaping your strategy for 2026?
Hi, Patrick. Thank you for having me, and thanks everyone. There was so many lessons, I think, but I think one of the biggest thing that came to the surface this year was just how powerful, deeply personal, resonant stories are. We saw it especially with our peer-to-peer events, but also sharing those stories at in-person events and gatherings. I think just reiterating how important those personal connections are and how much that deepened emotional connection really drives giving.
Yeah, thanks so much. And when you think about 2026, how is that shaping your path forward?
We're definitely doing more storytelling. We actually recently invested in a platform called Memory Fox, which, for those who aren't familiar, it's a collection tool that we are able to get photos and videos and testimonials and things like that from our community. So, really using that as a tool to shape those stories and turn them back to our community as well as our donor base has been impactful so far. So, we're going to do more of that definitely in 2026.
Awesome. Emily, what about you? What was the biggest lesson you learned, and how's it shaping 2026?
Yeah, thanks, Patrick. Yeah, so a little bit of context. So, Single Mom is a one-woman show right now as far as fundraising goes. I am the fund development director, and I do all of it alongside of our executive directors. So, 1.8 million is no small feat for a small team, but I think it's helpful to know that in light of what I'm going to share. I also just joined the team here at Single Mom 2 years ago, and we did nothing around planned giving. So it's been really fun for me to bring that in alongside of FreeWill over the last year. And so the biggest thing that we've seen is actually just saying that we take these awesome gifts and that you can trust us with it. So it's been a really big year for us as we partnered with FreeWill. And we've done a variety of different events. And so it's almost like a reinforcement of how did 2025 go and what went really well. It was just that we did a variety of small events. We did a bigger event. We did some like dinners that were really intimate dinners. And at every single one of them, I was saying we take non-cash gifts. This is how we do it. This is who we partner with. And we're an expert in it, which FreeWill has been really helpful in.
That's great. Um, let's go to Erin. What was the biggest lesson you learned, and how's
Um,
it shaping strategy?
yeah, I would dovetail everything that was just said because connecting with and listening to our supporters has been one of the things we focused on this year. A lot of small group listening and small group events, curated events for our kind of larger annual donors too, and then use the information that you get from those conversations to figure out how you can further educate supporters. You know, the whole thing is sometimes they just don't know. You might think of in public media, we think of our supporters as really smart and savvy, and they are, but that doesn't mean that their experience as a revered history professor translates to knowing exactly what the benefits of IRA giving are when you turn a very specific age. So use the information that you glean about how much they care about your organization to then find out how to educate them to enact all of those values.
Yeah, this is great. I mean, I just want to highlight two takeaways, and I'm going to sort of, put parenthetical references in some of this. One is this idea that a lot of these small events are really meaningful. It's actually something that we are, I think there's going to be a question in the survey at the end, by the way, about for you all, not you, the panelists, although you're welcome to fill it out, but the now 1,200 people on the call is, would you be interested in sort of some small events around the country when and where that's possible? And you don't, galas can take 4 months to plan and, tens of thousands of dollars, et cetera. Like some of your donors have big enough dining tables to fit 12 people around it and being able to sort of curate that list, it's a really powerful moment. So really interesting. Two, I want to dovetail on this thing that Erin said, which is you can think highly of your donors, but please don't overassume their ability to think about like some of these different types of gifts, right? It's just they are smart people, but none of them have a degree for the most part in plan giving, major giving, tax strategy, and so there's a really big role for you to play. And we'll stick on this for a second. Cheyenne, did you notice any meaningful shifts in donor behavior this year, whether it was in cash giving or non-cash giving or engagement overall?
We did. We saw, I would say, I mean, definitely with non-cash giving, but in particular, QCDs seemed to really surge for us. We had actually, it's incredible, a 300% increase in QCD giving. So it seems like older donors are sort of looking at more strategic ways to give. I don't know if it's the economic uncertainty or the rising number of older donors, but we certainly saw a huge surge there this year.
Yeah. And Cheyenne, just for the crew here, what's a QCD?
Oh, of course. Qualified charitable distribution. So
Mhm.
making those required minimum distributions often for older donors has been really exciting for us.
Yeah, those are great. Um, and these are what folks become eligible at 70 and a half years old. So, but a 300% increase is pretty wild. Emily, what about you?
Yeah, we saw, like I mentioned before, this was really the first year that we really hit home that we could receive more creative giving and more smart giving. And so we saw a huge increase in stock gifts. Economically, that makes a lot of sense, right? But we had a donor who generally gives around $10,000 give $95,000 last week. So just knowing, and it was really a simple phone call where he said, actually, you've been talking a lot about stock gifts. Can I give in stock? And I said, yes, of course. Yes, we can definitely do that, right? Yeah. And it wasn't that we weren't receiving stock gifts before we partnered with FreeWill. We could absolutely receive them, but we were not highlighting any of that. So huge increase in stock gifts. And then also Cheyenne nailed it. We've seen an increase in QCD gifts. And even my IRA givers are communicating my bucket. I was taking money out of my bucket and it just keeps getting refilled. Like the stock market is just so good that money is just coming right
Mhm.
as it comes out and they're
Right.
giving, it's going back in. So it's been a really fun year for that.
Emily, you mentioned this, but can you just restate it? So a $90,000 stock gift, how much was this person giving? Uh,
$10,000 a year.
$10,000.
Yeah.
So a nine
Yeah.
times increase just by
Hmm.
changing the way they give. This is so
Yes.
important. By the
Yes.
way, there's this funny grassroots groundswell right now to hear more from Kalisha. Just as a point of reference, Erin and Kalisha come from the same organization, so we're dividing their organizations. You're going to hear so much from Kalisha. You're going to be so tired of Kalisha at the end. So everyone be patient, but you're going to get some wisdom from Kalisha soon. Erin, what about you? Any meaningful shifts?
Oh yeah. Well, public media was one of the sectors that was really affected by federal funding cuts this year. So we saw a massive uptick in donor engagement across the board in every conceivable way. And what that's really, besides buoying our spirits and kind of getting us ready to charge ahead with our mission, we're seeing the opportunity now to kind of take this influx of brand new donors who we can tell through some of our segmentation and research are highly capable of making really significant gifts. But they came in with that just, I want to stand up and support you, $100 gift online, or maybe $1,000 gift, they wrote a check. Now's our opportunity to educate them about the benefits of asset-based giving for next year as we kind of look at 2026.
That's great. Kalisha, on the you're on the mic is yours as the people have demanded. As you look ahead to 2026, what goals are you setting early, and how are you making progress to them now as opposed to just sort of waiting for Jan 1 to start the sprint?
So I've been at MPT a little over 2 years, and it's been drastically different from the first time that I started. So one takeaway I have actually is from the CGP conference, the Charitable Gift Planning Conference that I just attended back in October. And my goal was to get a mentor that would be able to help me enhance my plan giving career. So in meeting with her, I have meetings monthly to go through my goals for the year. And one of the biggest things that I do is the estate planning webinar for National Estate Planning Awareness Week
Hmm.
and changing it up for next year. I'm actually working with an attorney for next year to do a series. So I'm kind of opening it up where we would focus on financial literacy one month, and then we would do Make a Will month. We're going to do a webinar, and then we're going to do the charitable gift planning in the fall. So my my plan giving marketing plan is usually all laid out by the end of the year.
Yeah. And Emily, what about you? What's when you're looking ahead to 2026, what goals have you set, and what's the early process there?
Yeah, so you're catching me in the middle of a fiscal year. So our fiscal year ends June 30th, which I'm sure many
Mm.
on the call are very similar to me. So we have our fund development plan, our strategic plan already set, right? But one thing I think, and this helps answer a question later when we get to it, but I like rethinking that plan is really important.
Mhm.
So we might get really stuck in a plan, right? But rethinking it halfway through the year is totally okay, and it's okay to change it. And yeah, I just met with my fund development committee, and we are shifting into a year that's our biggest year. And so we're asking for bigger gifts again and again and again. And so one thing that we just have to be aware of is the ask fatigue. And we're feeling that a little bit here at Single Mom. And so I just have to be really strategic relationally, and making sure that I'm not asking over asking, but that I'm asking in the right way. And that's where it's helpful to think through the segments of age. And if they have a donor advised fund, we're actually tracking that now, right? And so I can know that likely a donor right now is putting funds into a donor advised fund at the end of the year. And then come January, I can strategically think, hey, when with your National Christian Foundation or Fidelity Charitable, I know last year you put a significant portion of your funds in there. What does that look like this year as you're giving it out? How can I help in that process? And I say this a lot to my donors. My job is to help steward them as they steward the money they're given. So that's a biblical way of looking at it for me. We're a Christian nonprofit here. But how can I steward a donor in the way that they're stewarding the funds that they have? And one of those is asking specifically, how can you give money out of your donor advised fund?
Yeah, it's a really just great avenue. Really appreciate it. Coming back to 2025 for a second, and maybe we'll start with Erin. What outreach tactics proved most effective, and why do you think they worked?
Yeah, I think for us, it was crucial because, as I mentioned, the federal funding picture for public media was changing so quickly. We focused so much on digital outreach. Our membership team, our major giving team was focused on preparing messages, getting them kind of ready to go, and then adjusting them on the fly as needed, testing out different things. We weren't sure. If there would be kind of donor fatigue from the messaging about, because we had a lot of advocacy messaging happening too. And then once federal funding was removed, messaging about helping to, stand up and support in the face of that loss. So we were a little bit nervous about, are people going to get just sick of this message? But we listened to what the data was telling us in terms of engagement and in terms of donations. And we found that people wanted to keep hearing what was happening in that regard for much longer than we would have guessed or we would have put in a communication plan. So we were willing to kind of be responsive to what the messaging and the donor behavior was telling us instead of following our set in stone plan. And that really led to some great success.
That's great. Um, Cheyenne, when you think about a strategic change or an investment you're making in prep for the new year, what do you think is going to have the biggest payoff?
Uh, I think, I mean, I already mentioned Memory Fox, but I think to broaden that a little bit, really just harnessing the stories that are shared out there. We have a really, really robust online community, excuse me. And so support network for the Dravet family patient families. And so I think looking at ways that we can both have them and encourage them and empower them to share their own stories, as well as, if a planned gift comes in, asking for testimonials, asking for them to
Mm.
sort of share how that process worked for them, giving them those opportunities to share about a legacy gift, for example. And I think, being able to amplify that in the new year is going to really pay off in the long run.
Yeah. Emily, what do you think?
Yeah, I love Cheyenne. You mentioned the story piece. So we have never here at Single Mom shared like a really good donor story and the success of that donor story. We've shared pieces of it, but we haven't seen like a full picture in a video, right? Or
Mm.
even written out. And so that's one thing as we look into 2026, how can we, like this donor that just usually gives an annual gift of $10,000 is now giving at a $90,000 level. They're giving in a strategic way, absolutely, but there's a huge heart behind that. It's not just, wow, yay, I gave a stock gift. It's like I'm giving because I specifically for this donor, like wanting to be a grandparent to these families of single moms, and it's incredible. And that's what really matters to us, right? But we want to also share at the end of that there was a really beautiful funnel in how this donor was able to accomplish that gift and receive the joy of giving because of that.
Yeah. Erin, what about you? Big strategic shifts? I mean, it's a very different start to a year than last year.
Sure is. So we're really seeing a lot of donors who give in that kind of $500 to $2,000 range. They're responding extraordinarily well to some interaction and more interaction than they've had in the past, maybe some light stewardship, impact reporting, that kind of thing. We've actually hired our first kind of mid-level donor engagement staff member who's been doing a great job with outreach and communication. And so we want to now kind of continue helping them find ways to deepen their connection and their philanthropic involvement. So we're excited about, sharing the impact of how they've made a difference thus far, and then helping them see we can be a partner in making sure their values are expressed in the world. And some of the easiest ways to do that might be to fund a program. And one of the best ways to do that might be to make a stock gift. So, just following them along their path, those mid-level folks that we haven't focused as much attention on before.
That's right. I just want to make one comment on this because I think it's really important. There have been a bunch of questions in the chat around donor fatigue. You can fatigue donors with two asks a year, and you can have donors not fatigued with 180. And the question is, are you adding value each time? And do they trust that if they're able to give, that it's going to have the kind of impact that they want to have in the world, right? I mean, if those of you that watch TV or sort of drive down a highway with billboards, you'll know that like Bud Light and Coca-Cola and some of these other things, they're not saying, oh, are people tired of being asked to buy Bud Light or buy Coca-Cola, right? You'll get, dozens of messages a day in some cases if you're watching enough TV, and they have to be valuable, they have to be really memorable. And we'll talk more about that in a moment. Later in the session, as we wrap up, I'm going to show you what we think of as the perfect thank you note, which immediately sort of undoes that feeling of I'm being asked. Like it's a real sort of dopamine hit immediately, and we'll show you what that looks like. Kalisha, going off script for a second, a lot of folks have been asking, well, wow, you got a mentor. That sounds really great. How did you go about finding and also choosing someone who was going to be useful? Because there may be people who will offer to be mentors, but might not be that great.
So it was all through CGP. So I've attended some of the emerging professional webinars that they hosted. And last year I tried to do it, but I was like, I only had a year under my belt. Let me give myself another year. And I
Mhm.
wasn't sure if I was going to get accepted this year. I believe the requirement is 2 years. So they are actually the ones who research and they match up the mentors and the mentees. And they're always looking for mentees. So if you're interested, I would highly recommend.
That's great. And just for those of you, many of you know this, but CGP is Charitable Gift Planners. It's sort of the professional association of folks who do particularly planned giving work, but that really isn't just bequests. It often tends to be things like donor advised funds or major giving or qualified charitable distributions. And Kalisha and I and some other folks were at a big conference in Indianapolis this year. And I think it is in Chicago next year or New Orleans. Who knows?
New Orleans.
New Orleans. So New Orleans next. So if you want to come party in New Orleans next October, come feel free to come join that. Um, Erin, are there specific, uh, or sorry, different question. Um, when you look at sort of cash and non-cash giving, where do you think the biggest areas for growth are in 2026? And are you thinking at all about how tax changes will affect folks?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, of course, some exciting opportunities with the tax changes, but this is something that was alluded to earlier with stock giving. I mean, just, you know, with the couple years of strong market returns that we've seen, we are just all so well positioned, I think, to invite donors to consider giving this way. A lot of folks just need to be kind of walked through the process once to understand how beneficial it is to make a gift like this. Habit is so powerful. And if you've got some donors who love your mission and they've been used to, for the past 10 years, writing a check, or maybe they made the leap to going online to make their contribution, they really just need that little bit of education. And now is the time for stock giving education, because folks could really benefit from making that switch right now. So that's going to be one of our big areas of focus in 2026 for sure.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Emily?
Sorry, I was far away from the mute button.
That's okay.
Yeah, yes, yeah. As we think about the cash and non-cash gifts, we have a lot of people in our database who just give cash, right? Like I've mentioned, this is a shift that we're experiencing here at Single Mom. So most of what I'm doing is educating. I am saying at every event, I am putting it in every marketing material. If you'd like to get creative with your giving, is essentially what I'm saying. Come talk to me. Let's talk. So we're definitely seeing that increase in the non-cash gifts. Like I said, education is huge. I am having donors who actually give non-cash gifts other places, but have not considered a non-cash gift to us, sit in front of me, and they almost like quiz me a little bit. They kind of do these like leading questions of like, how much do you actually know about this? Which is them asking if they can trust me, right? Can you trust me to give a gift to single mom and we're going to steward it really well? And we have the appropriate processes to receive that gift? Can we brainstorm around life insurance policies and real estate, right? And I rally in those conversations, which single mom just wasn't rallying in those conversations before. And so it's been really fun to see the trust of a donor come through just a conversation. And it's like, here's my encouragement to all of you out there that just, I don't know enough. You don't have to know enough. Like if you know two sentences, that's enough. Just knowing a little bit more about planned giving, rally in that conversation. And then when you hit the point where you don't know more, you say, let me call the people that I do know that know more about it, because there's a lot of people that know more about it, right? But that's been a really sweet shift of trust here at Single Mom.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I just want to shout out Emily for a second. If you sort of pull the threads together of what she's saying, the repetition and, obviously getting a bunch of other non-cash gifts, moving that one donor from 10,000 to $90,000, you said, $80,000 benefit just by switching the way they give. For you, that's like 5% of your overall budget, right? If I'm doing the math correctly. So, just by doing this and think about the work that Emily's doing in her organization and how many more people are served just because of that one conversation with that one donor. And so it can be easy to be abstract when we have conversations like this and we're all on Zoom and we're talking about the sort of finer points of tax policy, but this matters so much. So thank you for that. Um, Cheyenne, you already saw that massive surge in QCDs. How are you thinking about the biggest growth across cash and non-cash gifts in 26?
Yes, so we're definitely, I mean, of course, looking forward to growing our non-cash giving. Those avenues seem to be accelerating. But I think a really interesting take for us is that there is a ton of cash giving opportunity as well. The large majority of our revenue actually comes from peer-to-peer fundraisers who are often patient family members, as well as volunteer benefit hosts. So a lot of their family and friends and connections, of course, we want to educate them about those non-cash giving options as well, but most of them are going to give lower dollar amounts. And, in that opportunity, there's a lot to really be able to have one more volunteer fundraiser or one more, benefit host who's able to pull in a lot of extra cash giving from new donors that are new to us. So that is an avenue that we're looking at to explore and, grow our cash giving. But again, like all of the panelists have said, QCD gifts, stock gifts, even donor advised fund gifts really seem to be on the rise. And so, looking at growing those strategic options as well.
That makes sense. I think, Cheyenne, you saw this enormous growth in QCDs. Erin, you mentioned that stock gifts are a really big priority. Just sort of generally to the panel, are there other sort of non-cash gift types that you expect to play a larger role in 26 based on what you're hearing?
Yeah, for us, I would say charitable gift annuities are, we've had more interest at the end of this year for that. And I think that we're going to continue starting to, I mean, for us, we're just kind of dipping our toe in and we're using a charitable gift annuity servicer. We're not holding the annuities ourselves. But we're excited to be able to offer that to some people because it's a great way for them to think, oh, I would love to help this organization. I want to make sure that I'm taking care of myself, my family at the same time. And you can have those conversations easily with a gift annuity.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, one other thing that I just want to note here that we'll talk more about this in next week's webinar when we look at major trends affecting 2026, but the number of folks who are over 70 is just going up dramatically. It's just, there honestly, if you look at the math, like there weren't that many people turning 70 10 years ago compared to what they are now. It might be twice as many. And so you have this huge surge in giving, which means obviously qualified charitable distributions. Part of what Cheyenne is seeing is more awareness. Part of what she's seeing is more 70-year-olds, and part of what she's seeing is her organization is doing a better job at it than they used to, right? That's sort of all those three things go together, but overall, just really interesting. And we have to understand demographics are the only predictable thing we have, right? We know how many people were 69 this year. We know how many people will be 70 next year. And so it's a really, really big benefit.
Patrick, if
Kalisha,
I can just,
yes, go
if I
ahead.
can interrupt real quick, because I just thought of this when Cheyenne was talking as well. I have givers who are giving now with QCD, but they're also giving cash monthly.
Yes,
So it's both buckets, and I think that's what's really helpful for me to remind myself. It's not just, hey, let's have a gift from a donor advised fund, because I also have someone giving significantly out of a donor advised fund who's also giving $250 from their credit card every
right.
single month. And so there's donors who can tap into both worlds, which I think is a good reminder.
I think what you're seeing is there's some people that just feel like they have extra at the end of the year because the stock market's been so good. And so donor advised fund was bigger than you might have thought, right? And for folks who are just very briefly on QCDs, once you turn to 73, the government says you have to start taking some money out. And there's a fixed percentage, there's minimum. But let's say that your IRA grew and grew and grew over the last 20 years, which it has if you've looked at the market. Then you're saying, oh, I don't actually need all this money. I don't want to pay taxes on it. The only way I can give it, or the only way I can avoid taxes is giving it to one of these wonderful charities. And so really amazing, awesome. Karen says she just got $1,000 QCD from a recurring monthly donor, and we started to see a lot more stories like this. So that's great. Kalisha, how are you balancing messaging between cash giving, plan giving, asset-based giving? I mean, there's a lot going on here.
Well, following the federal funding cuts, we have received a whole bunch of stock staff gifts. But we have talked about our endowment fund and how we're going to try to strengthen that and having more targeted conversations towards growing the endowment fund. Other ways I do based off of plan giving, I have my weekly newsletter. I try to do my, as I prepare for next year, focusing more on trying to educate my donors about plan giving. So that's the main reason for the series that I have next month or next year.
It's so important. Are other folks doing educational messaging, or how are you all thinking about getting folks in your network smarter about everything that's changing and some of the stuff that isn't in 2026? Cheyenne, it looks like you're about to answer.
Yeah, I can jump in. I thought it was really interesting that, and there's been a lot of talk about sort of donor fatigue and how do we balance if we're talking too much about these gifts. And you mentioned, Patrick, we're not tired of seeing the billboard signs, and that kind of is how it works in the donor world. So last year was our first year, similar to Emily, with FreeWill. And so last year, I think the messaging really focused on education and just getting these options in front of people. But this year, we've been a little bit more, we've had the luxury of being a little bit more strategic and both educating people, but then also sharing those personal stories. And so our FreeWill end of year campaign just went out, which tied that really nice patient story to those giving options. And actually, what we saw this year that I was really excited about is that multi-gift donors increased by 39% at DSF. And so when we think about, oh, donors are going to get tired of hearing of all these ways to give, what we're seeing is that, like Emily mentioned, they're often just giving more than once. And so maybe they still make a cash gift, but they're also utilizing these other tools to make gifts when we remind them that these options are available. And then we also hit them with a really emotional, resonant story. I think, just reminding people that those options are there and our messaging is really key.
Yeah, that's great. Anna or Emily, how do you think about this? Is there any big education that you're doing in 26?
Go ahead, Erin.
Okay. Yeah, I actually am very excited because we're using the FreeWill marketing library. We created a kind of ways to give brochure that focuses on asset-based giving that we've printed and we have for leave behinds and stuff. But we've been thinking about and kind of on the verge of doing a mailing of it for quite some time. And I think we do have a little bit of money to send this out as a mailing to a targeted group. So I'm very excited to, digital is so great because it is low cost. You just send it when you send it. It is easy to kind of put together. But a lot of people, they need to hear the message in multiple ways. Some people will respond better or absorb the information better with a physical brochure in their hands. So we're really excited by that. And if anyone wants a copy of how we adjusted the FreeWill marketing piece for us, feel free to shoot me an email or connect on LinkedIn and I'll send you our version of how we did it.
Great. Erin, if you shoot that to me too, I'll share it as well so folks have it as well. That's really great. That's very sweet. Emily, what were you going to say?
Yeah. Yeah, two quick things. First thing, similarly, we, like many of us, are sending out all of our receipts in 2026, right? And I feel like that is sometimes a missed opportunity. And so we are highlighting that opportunity. We send every year a personal note in those, and I know that's hard to do for really large organizations, but we try really hard to make it really personal, even with their receipt. Like, thank you so much for the impact that you made through this gift in 2025, right? But this year, we'll be sending a little bit more around, just like Erin mentioned, that ways to give. As you think strategically about your gift in 2026, here are some creative ways to make that happen. So that's one thing. The second thing, which is a huge shout out to FreeWill, if you haven't used William, please use William. It is so great. If you're addicted to ChatGPT like I am and you're using AI every day, use William and it'll be specific to what you, and Patrick probably has way more things to say about this, but more specifically around the language that you can use with plan gifts and non-cash gifts and all that. And I just did this for one of our Thanksgiving mailers that we do, and it was just really helpful to get just like a little bit different idea out there, right? Like I can say, I'm like a broken record. I can say the same thing over and over and over again. And William helped me just rephrase it a little bit differently. So Patrick, I don't know if you have more to say about that, but
Yeah,
it was
sure.
helpful.
Just very quickly on so William, we actually have two AI tools for fundraisers. We have a bunch of other tools, but we created something called Willy like almost 3 years ago now, which was really the first AI fundraising companion. And most AI is sort of scours the web and uses that to get smart, which is all well and good. This is built with a bunch of the academic research around best practices in plan giving and major giving and all sorts of giving, so that it's not just sort of what do people normally say. It's like, what does actually research show is the best way to do it? So there's something called Willy, which is a totally free version for anyone anywhere in the world to use. And then there's an even more advanced version, a little grown-up Willy called William, which is within our partner portal. So feel free to use either of those depending on where you are. One thing I wanted to highlight on this education piece, which really allows everyone to sort of escape the donor fatigue or the education fatigue. And it's like one phrase that you can use. And what we often say is like, we hope this can be helpful for any of your giving, right? Because what that does is it takes down the defensive. It's, I'm not getting asked again. I'm listening. Because Emily, I'm sure that almost none of your donors are giving only to you. And Erin, I'm sure that almost none of your donors are giving only to you. Cheyenne, same thing. Kalisha, you and Erin work together, so it's going to be also true. But people are giving to their church, they're giving to their synagogue, they're giving to their mosque, they're giving to their college, they're giving to the local Boys and Girls Club, they're giving to the Boy Scout or the Girl Scouts troop, right? They're giving to the local land trust, they're giving to whatever their cousin is doing, right? Regardless of whether they care about that cause or not. And so when you can say, oh, this is helpful across the board, it really lets their guard down, allows them to be educated instead of this sort of, oh, this feels like an ask. And so we're just noting that it could be really interesting. Um, wow, we've gotten so much good and we don't even have that much time left. Um, Erin, you mentioned that you're sort of doing a little bit more direct mail. How are you all thinking about refining your outreach channels, email, social, direct mail, events early in 2026 to start building momentum?
Well, I'll jump in and just say we're really excited to be bringing on a new in-house comms person this December. So obviously the strategy might evolve and shift a little bit when they come in and have their own ideas. But currently we're really just looking at segmenting our emails by gift history as much as we can. So without over segmenting, but again, just as a way to make that feel more personal, that outreach at end of year. And then again, just sharing more impact stories and via social media, newsletters, and doing that as much as we can, I think will help people keep connected as we go into the year. And again, help with that donor fatigue because we're just sharing great stories and great impact.
Yeah. Erin, were you going to say something?
No, I was just going to say, as key as digital is, we still have 25% of our donors coming to us via direct mail. So that is something that our membership team is iterating and adjusting and figuring out because that's a great messaging opportunity, but it is one that you really have to plan well in advance for. So.
Yeah. This is a good time to share one of my absolute favorite direct mail tips from our dear friend Josh Alcorn, who helps with some of the direct mail webinars sometimes. What Josh will say is, the highest ROI in all of fundraising is a paperclip. And if you have an annual report or something else that you're mailing out, and you can paperclip a note to the top of it for a major donor that says, I think you'll really love I really love this sort of like guide to the annual report. I think you'll love page 26, page 29, and page 33, which are all about the ways you've governed. Thanks so much. Right. And that sort of heft in the letter, et cetera. Those of you know, paper clips cost well under 1 cent. But a really helpful thing for your top 50, your top 100, your top 1,000 donors, depending on the size of your organization, can be super beneficial. Um, Okay, I was assigned to ask this question by our marketing team, so Kalisha, I'm going to start with you. How are tools like FreeWill shaping your planned, smart, and major giving strategy as you head into the new year?
Well, I use FreeWill for all three of my campaigns throughout the year. I kind of mold them around the campaign. So usually January, February, we do the New Year, New You. I did change it up this past year, and we focused on Black History Month in February, and then in October, Make a Will Month. And National Planning Awareness Week. When I did my estate planning webinar, I had received two emails from FreeWill. One focused on the webinar and those who attended and the resources that were available. And then the other one was a generic email blast to our entire audience. And then going into next year, it would probably be around the same thing. I do utilize William a lot for my weekly newsletter. And we also have our ways to give that as Erin has mentioned, that we have on our website, and we use FreeWill for most of our marketing. I love that it transfers into Canva, makes it easy to adjust, and then that's a lot of our pieces that we hand out at events and
Awesome.
fundraisers.
Yeah, thank you. Cheyenne, what about you?
Similarly, I mean, we use the marketing library and use as much of that as we can, both for mailers as well as in-person events and things like that. I would say the one interesting thing that I didn't realize was going to make such a big impact, but it did for all of the free will partners out there. You guys recently released the widget version, so having the embedded FreeWill form rather than taking the donor out of the ways to give page and opening up a FreeWill page. It now sort of just lives nicely within our website. We're seeing on the back end that there's just been a lot more traffic. So I think that translates to just people sort of feeling comfortable on our website and staying there and being able to click all of the different options without opening up new tabs, has been, translating into more people staying and exploring those options.
That's great. There's a question, where can we get that? Rebecca, if you're a FreeWill partner and you have the Smart Giving Suite, it's in the portal for you. Great question. Um, Emily.
Yeah, it's really fun being a panelist and also learning from fellow panelists. But because that's what I'm doing right now, which is really beautiful. So, as a reminder, I'm a one-woman show. I want to do so many things. But I'm sitting here recognizing that there's totally other organizations on this webinar that you feel like, man, I could be doing so much more. And I feel that with you. So just know that. I really, as we look at 2026, the biggest thing that we did in 2025, 2024 was the Make a Will month. It kind of just like launches you into this like sophisticated stage of planned giving that people are like, oh, wow, you know what you're talking about. So that's my like, we absolutely do that, like non-negotiable. As much as I have a million things that I'm doing, right? I always make sure we're staying track on that. But as I look at 2026 specifically, we have shifted our giving envelopes to be directing people with a QR code to give through FreeWill. And so that, I mean, it's really basic, right? You're like, yeah, of course there's a QR code on a giving page, but usually you just do a QR code to your giving page. We're doing a QR code to our giving page, and we're doing a QR code to our FreeWill page. And so, yes, the widget is there, and that's really awesome, right? But we're saying, hey, we're even more sophisticated. Why don't you do this QR code, and it'll take you right to where you get fully educated on all of the different channels and smart giving options that you have. So and similar to the paperclip, we're just putting that in everything. That's the easiest thing for me to do. Like, right, you can do it with your eyes closed. It doesn't take extra work for me. We're just sliding in that giving envelope, but it's a really strategic piece for us. And it's got different boxes for people to check, and even a box that says, I want to talk to Emily about a donor advised fund, or I want to talk to Emily about this planned gift. So just helpful to be more specific on that giving envelope.
Amazing. We are almost at time, so we're going to wrap with sort of best advice going to 2026, maybe 60 seconds each, and we'll go Erin, Emily, Cheyenne, and Kalisha, just so you have a second to think about it. But Erin, putting you on the spot first.
Sure. Well, best advice I would say going into 2026 is, I know that this happens to me all the time. I attend a webinar like this, or just get so inspired and get great information. And then it's like, when are you going to have the time to implement any of it? So especially if you're a small shop, and Emily can speak to this even more, I would say go ahead and treat this as non-negotiable. Go ahead and book your outreach and education and communication plan about this kind of stuff into your calendar as if it's a meeting you cannot miss, or as if it's a grant proposal you have to submit. Kind of protect the time that you need to pull some of these threads together and get a little bit of this education out there for your donors to try at least one thing that you haven't tried before. Because that's the great tragedy, is to get kind of inspired and motivated and then just feel like you don't have the time. So force that time into the calendar.
That's great.
Yeah,
Emily.
Erin, that's exactly what I was going to say. I have a block of time every Tuesday morning. It's like literally on my calendar, and it just says learn. I just spend an hour and I just learn. The more I'm educated, the more I start saying sentences to my donors that are a little bit different, that just invite them into something different. So that's a personal development thing for us, right? As fundraisers, we need to be learning, whether that's reading the Chronicle of Philanthropy and spending an hour actually reading it because we know it lands on our desk and we know that we don't always open it, right? But really having that block of time to develop your own knowledge about how to speak about planned gifts is really, really critical.
That's great. Cheyenne.
I think one piece of advice as you're heading into 2026, and just as you're wrapping up Q4, would really just be to personalize your outreach as much as you can. I know we're all juggling a million things at end of year, and it can be really easy to lose sight of each donor as a human being. And so, what we've seen really pay off is when you write that handwritten thank you note or you make that little phone call, even just to say, thank you so much for your support this year. Sometimes those unexpected personal touch points can result in one of those major gifts. And it gives you an opportunity, if they're curious about other ways to give, to it kind of keeps that door open. So yeah, if you can find the time, if you can put it in your calendar, just to really make those personal connections as much as you can, especially with those non-cash donors.
Great. And Kalisha, we'll wrap with you. Thank you, Cheyenne.
I'm just going to piggyback off of what everyone say. I do the same thing as Emily. I have a weekly check-in that I just reach out to my portfolio to see how they're doing. I would suggest thinking outside the box. Know your audience. If you can figure out ways to reach them, do it. So I send birthday cards. I will randomly check in with upcoming events that's happening at the station. I'm just always thinking of other things that I could do and get out in the community. If you see a community event, try to be there.
Amazing. Well, I'm going to share my screen again. Let's see if this works. We're going to do a couple of quick announcements, and then I hope you can all join me in thanking our panelists as well. So very quickly before we get to thank yous, my colleague Phoebe is going to drop a survey in the chat right now if you would like the slides and particularly this recording, please do so, as well as we'll give away 20 copies of Breakneck, which is just a truly wonderful book. So we'll do that. Two other quick things I wanted to make sure to get you before end of year. This is what we were talking about earlier as sort of this perfect thank you note. I'm going to go through it very quickly. Thank you so much for blank. Because of you, right now, blank, or your gift is being put to work immediately doing X. This idea that the gap between the gift and the action is very small is incredibly important, right? Your gift is already at work. Our team is doing X. This work will have a lasting impact, et cetera. Your support keeps doing this, et cetera. And so we'll be in touch soon to share more. But this idea that it's sort of a regular update, as opposed to this very sort of basic thank you that a lot of you are sending out right now, which just says, thank you, this is your tax deductible receipt, right? You can include that in there, but we want to make sure we're really giving that sense of feeling to folks as well. The other thing that a lot of people have already used and sent us really positive feedback on is Emily said, you might not be as comfortable talking about stock giving, and many of you are doing fine on that. But we've just created a video you can send to your donors with Dr. Russell James. Those of you that know Russell, he is the leading academic on fundraising and effective giving in the world. And so we recorded a video, and we'll include a link to that in case you want to share it. It can be a great asset. Dr. James walks through some of these different types of ways to give. You can just send it in a quick note to your major donors or even these mid-level donors whom you're trying to shift. Great resource already done for you. So take a look at that. And then next week is our final webinar of 2025. And what we're going to do is we're going to sort of step back and look at some of the huge macro trends shaping 2026 and how that might affect giving, right? From tax policies to markets to demographics to what's going to happen. We're back in 2026, another election year, right? It feels like we just got out of that. We're back in. Midterms are going to be taking place next November. Going to be a lot of noise around it, very highly contested in a bunch of key states. We'll talk about which states. And so how you might want to start navigating that, we'll dive in next year if you're not so tired of talking to me. So next steps, if you haven't already, please fill out the survey. Again, the next webinar is next Tuesday. If you're interested in learning more about some of the FreeWill tools that you heard about today, you can actually sign up for a one-on-one meeting and schedule it directly in the survey, which is pretty cool. That's new tech that we have. So give that a shot. And if you have any questions for me, you can find me on LinkedIn. You can also find Kalisha, Erin, Emily, and Cheyenne on LinkedIn, and I'm sure they'd love to connect with you. And with that, I hope you can all just sort of join me in the chat, thanking Kalisha, Erin, Emily, and Cheyenne for bringing all of their thoughtfulness and also just the incredible work they're doing in their daily work lives that was able to allow them to build this expertise to bring to us. And so it's been a real joy to spend an hour with you four, and thank you so much. And thank you, obviously, to everyone else who joined. We know that you are really busy, especially right now, and it means a lot to us that you sort of came here to advance your careers, advance your organizations, and also just have a little fun together. So thank you so much. Happy Hanukkah for those of you celebrating on Sunday, and we'll see many of you next Tuesday. And if this works, we'll